A preliminary investigation report on the crash of Air India Flight 171 has become a huge controversy because there are many questions around what must have happened on that flight. The report had a few lines which have cast doubts on whether it was deliberate human action or not. The world of pilots seems to be divided. The world of media seems to be divided on what must have actually transpired on Flight 171. Joining us today to speak about this is Captain Sam Thomas. He's the president of the Airlines Pilot Associations of India. He's an aviation consultant. He has worked with Jet Airways for 19 years. He shuttles between Chennai and Bengaluru, and we could catch him and make him come to our Bengaluru studio. Thank you very much, Captain Sam Thomas, for joining us. Shabir and Leena are, of course, there. So this report, when it came out, the first doubt was that the crash must have happened because of the way the fuel cutoff switches transition. That's the word that is used in the report, right? Tell me your first thoughts about the report itself, because it very oddly goes on to record just one line which was spoken in the cockpit between two pilots without actually noting which pilot said what. It says one pilot asked the other, why did he cut off? The other pilot said he did not do so.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. The first objection that we had, our objections are based on two lines basically. The first objection that we had is with the report itself. A, because it was clandestinely released in the middle of the night. No government agency works even during regular hours, leave alone at 1:30 in the morning. It was not signed by anybody. So it's just a piece of paper. 3, 2 days prior to it being released in India, it was released to the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal carried out a report. Now, in journalistic terms, I understand that could happen, but in air accident investigation, it never happens. So there's definitely a leak. 4 is, like you mentioned, the line, one single line of the CVR is released, and that is never done. 5, it gives a clean chit to Boeing, which no preliminary report gives any kind of clean chit to the OEM. So these are the reasons on which we contested primarily the report that is published by AAIB. The other objection that we had, which we were screaming from the top of our voices, were that do not speculate. Those who are not involved with this actively, do not say anything about it because it is misleading the media. The media's job is to ask questions. They will ask and they can speculate, no problem. Our problem is with pilots speculating. That causes a problem, and now we are at a situation where the complete Western media believes, I've been giving interviews to them, they very clearly say that it's not we who said that you have a pilot suicide. It is you who said it. It's your pilot who said it. So these are the two verticals under which we have the objection. If you want the report, we can discuss the report. If you want the speculation, we can discuss that.
No, I think we'll do a little bit of both. But to those listening and watching, so basically this report is prepared by the Indian government, the Ministry of Civil Aviation, and the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. And of course, one of the opposition that you said is that the report was leaked. But as a journalist, what I can say is that reports are leaked all the time, right? And it depends. The question here is, why was it leaked to Wall Street Journal, or why did a Wall Street Journal journalist get access to it? I don't know, perhaps smarter journalist got it, or perhaps there was some deliberate attempt. Now that's again in the realm of speculation, right? But just to put it on record, all kinds of reports get leaked all the time to journalists. Now, there are a couple of things about this report itself. The report mentions that the FAA had issued a special airworthiness information bulletin about this fuel control button, right? Could you explain that a bit, as in what is the problem in the Dreamliner and other Boeing flights?
No, the information bulletin, first of all, an airworthiness directive. I'll try and keep all the technical words out.
Yes.
The maintenance orders that come from Boeing have a degree of severity to them. When they say airworthiness directive, it means it's very severe. You need to fix it within a specified time and get back to them to say that you've complied with this. Service bulletin, it has a bigger window wherein you can solve the problem. Information bulletin, good to know. If you feel like setting it right, please set it right. Otherwise, it's okay. Now, this is across the service bulletin that you are, or rather the information bulletin that you are referring to, and which was a part of the report, is one of those with the least severity. It talks of all the airplanes of Boeing, right, from 737-300 onwards to the 787-9. So it says that we have a problem with the solenoid. There is a chance that this fuel control switches, which are very difficult to move from cut off to run or run to cut off, and there needs to be a deliberate action. Maybe there are times when it could slip. Okay, so then what happened? This accident happened, and Etihad started the inspections immediately on that, because as a matter of abundant caution.
That the locking mechanism may not sometimes work.
May not sometime work. But in my experience, I've never seen it fail. And if you feel that it is failing and you have issued a service bulletin or an information bulletin, then there is something to it. We by no means are saying that it happened in this particular crash. That is why we wanted complete information, the DFDR information, the cockpit voice recorder, the ATC transcript, eyewitness reports. Now, if you put all this together, you will be able to get to the bottom of it without any mistakes. Now, in the absence of any of these, and when you put one sentence out, it is mischievous. Okay, that is deliberately done, we believe, to misguide the public.
No, but Captain Thomas, my doubt is, okay, if you look at the part where the report says that the two pilots spoke to each other and this switch basically went up and down in a matter of seconds, then you can speculate it was deliberate human action, right? But the same report also talks about this FAA advisory, which says that this switch can move by itself if the locking mechanism is there.
Yes.
So the report actually throws up two theories,
yes,
right?
Yeah. Now, that is the whole part. You should not have put that part over there. And if you had put that part there, then put the full transcript of the CVR so that we are not confused about this. Now, the media is as confused as the pilots are. In fact, the pilots are even more confused. They end up confusing everybody else, because in India, we have this compulsion to speak on everything. I mean, I'm guilty of that. So is even my mother sometimes speaks on how Indian teams should improve their fielding in cricket. So that's there in our culture. So having said that, these sort of hodgepodge job that they have done with the report is causing more confusion and anguish. And in the center of that is an insinuation that says that
this is perhaps a suicide attempt.
Yes, that is.
So before I come to Leena and Shabir, who I'm sure are bursting with questions, I have two things to ask you. If you can explain to the listeners in very simple terms, what is this fuel cutoff switch? And you were telling me before we started the show that if there's an engine failure, then also they do cut off the fuel, right? So when is it normally cut off in a flight?
Okay, normally in a flight, when you park the airplane at the end of the flight in a bay onto the bay, then one by one you cut off the switches. That's how the engine comes to the off position. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. To start the engine, you have an ignition switch and you have the start fuel control switches. These are the most important switches as far as starting and shutting them off are concerned. You put them up, they start. To put it up, you need to pull it out. It's spring-loaded. You put it in the notch and leave it. It stays there. It will not fall down on its own under normal circumstances or under extreme circumstances. Why we are saying that it has not happened over here is even in the crashed airplane, with the photograph shows it's in the run position. So that kind of impact has not brought it down. So we'd like to rule out that part that there is a malfunction in the switch. Now, what we were telling you about cutting off these switches is if you have a dual engine failure, there is just one checklist And the checklist has memory items. Memory items are something that you don't look at a book and do. You know, as soon as this has happened, this is what I'm going to do. That says fuel cutoff switches to cut off, because they are in the run right now as the airplane is flying, to cut off both and put them back to run and press the rat switch for 1 second. This is the checklist. And the checklist further continues on to if it happens, then what happens, and continue. So this is where the fuel control switches are coming into play. Now, there is a distinction between the fuel control switches and the fuel shutoff valves. The shutoff valves are an extension of these switches downline, which in conjunction with these switches, when I put them on, they open. And when I put them off, they close. Now, that's why we said the switches are binary, on and off. The valves transition. Transition A to B through A1B, A1, A2, A and to B at the intermediate positions. That's called a transition, not on and off. So
could they have made a mistake in this report between a valve and a switch?
maybe,
Because they've used the word transition.
maybe.
Okay. And my second doubt from what you're saying is that to simplify it more, you are saying that because after the crash, there's a picture which is published in the report which shows that fuel control switch is up, which is in the run position. So if the locking mechanism was not working, in that crash, there's a possibility it must have come down. So you are saying, which means the locking mechanism was working, which leaves us with, then the pilot must have moved the switches. If that is the case, you are saying that it is not a case of any suicide or deliberate act, but there could have been a dual engine failure, which is why the pilot was forced to switch off, right?
I'm saying it's a deliberate act. It better
Deliberate
be a
act
deliberate
as in not for mischief.
Yes, not for mischief. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
Okay. And one more question before I go to Shabir and Leena. You said in the beginning in your remarks that why was this released? Who are we trying to protect? There have been a lot of doubts cast on Boeing itself. We have had whistleblowers over the years talking about the lack of safety of those flights. So do you believe the way this report has been written could also be an attempt to perhaps shield Boeing?
Going by the history that the 737 MAX crashes, if you go by, you see that when the first Lion Air crash took place, they came and said, yeah, 100% pilot error. Then they found, Indian, 1000%. Then the crash happened in Ethiopia. The Ethiopians were very clever. They didn't send the black boxes anywhere out like we tried in India. They kept it with them. They decoded it in themselves. And with the help of certain outside help, then it came to light that you have a system in the airplane which you did not tell anybody. And that system, when malfunctions, deliberately crashes the plane. The congressional hearing which followed severely castigated Boeing. But what happened in the end, you pay some fine and then you get away with it. And so going by that history, and it's their job. If I were to be Boeing, even I would have done the same thing. I would have gone there first and said
But we are talking about a government report here, Indian government's report. Okay, Shabir, you have anything to say or ask?
See, I want to ask Captain, what is this report not saying? What is that you expect? If there is a report, it has to give answers, right? We don't know what exactly happened with the flight 171. Now, this report has, created more doubts in the minds of people. So what is this report not saying?
It's not saying anything. What we would have liked, ideal case scenario, 30 days to come out with this. But see, in order to avoid any kind of speculation, what you do is you call for a press conference immediately as it happens and say, listen, we've constituted a committee, so-and-so are the committee. They're going to investigate. Every Friday, we will give you a debrief on what has happened and what we have done so far. We are using these are the credentials of these experts. And thereafter, we'll periodically tell you what is happening and we will answer your questions to the best of our ability. On the 30th day, you publish something which says, this accident has happened. So many people have perished in this accident. We believe that these are the parameters that we are checking. our line of thinking is going around A, B, and C. We will come back with the report to you in the interim after some time. Please do not speculate any further till we come back to you with this one. At this time, we are not clearing anybody of anything. All options remain open, including the sabotage, including everything, and every air crash de facto has the sabotage angle. It will be cleared by an expert who is either from NIA or some other investigative agency. So until that time, nobody should say anything. This is how preliminary reports come out. By putting in these extra little sentences and insinuating sort of accusatory tones and leaving it open to interpretation, that we believe is done mischievously, and that's our core objection.
Now, why do you call it mischievous? Because this is a report that has been drafted by the experts. The experts have looked into each and every aspect.
When you say experts, you'll have to go through the credentials of the experts as well. Now, an ex-Air Force engineer who has, they're constantly telling that he has sat in many court of inquiries. Now, have you seen a civilian airplane that also is so tech heavy? And if you feel that somebody who has, sat through court of inquiries, we really don't know what this court of inquiries is. They bandy it along very proudly, but having spoken to all the Air Force officers that I know, it's not something that you can be proud of. And so that is one of the reasons why we say that you have to have experts or subject matter experts from each realm. That's the engineering, the flying, the cabin crew. We tend to completely ignore them. The air traffic controllers, they also need to be on board. That's how you can have a comprehensive board and you will not make a mistake. Now, what have you got? People who don't want to say anything. No Indians are allowed. No journalists are allowed even near that Udan Bhawan. So, but Wall Street Journal, he's got it. So, because he's a very clever journalist, a smart journalist who has got that report much before even the official release. Danya is going to kill me.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. Leena, you have something to ask?
No, I will completely second the Wall Street Journal getting the leak. It's because of whatever sources we place and how we all want our hands on as journalists on this report before it reaches anybody else. So they're in the game. But what I'm trying to understand here is that what this preliminary report has done, as you have explained to us, is that thrown open ground for more speculation, made space for all kind of theories to be floated, especially putting some of the blame on the indefensible, the people who are not alive anymore. And I'm trying to understand this, whether the big company here involved, who has the insurance case, who has to pay the compensation, is this report and a step towards helping them shield some of the blames, which is what we should be understanding at this point, or will the liability be fixed only after the larger report comes out, which I understand is a few months or at least a year away, and the full investigation would be completed and the liabilities or the causation and how this happened will be clearly explained. Will the proceedings wait till that for fixing insurance liabilities and for compensation and all of that, or does this preliminary report in some way influence?
The preliminary report of any air crash investigation is by no means even in the general direction of what they are thinking. The final report may be 180 degrees off what this report is. This report basically is to tell you that we are going in this direction, we have done this. 30 days is too less for us to do anything more. And please wait for the final report. But by adding sentences and there is a set template for this. And if I just followed the IK1X13 and go by those templates, they would have been safe.
But I just want to play the devil's advocate here. For example, most of the pilots who are appearing on all TV channels or anywhere, you're all saying that there is an attempt to blame the pilots for the error, right? And you're saying that the company, which could be either Air India, Boeing, whichever it is trying to absolve itself. But somebody can turn around and say that this could have been a pilot error, and all that the pilots are now trying to say is to absolve those pilots.
Sure. Now, this is not the first time that you have to go by either my record or my opponent, for argument's sake, my opponent's record. Now, the opponent's record is there in front of you and how they have been dealing with the system. Now, as far as pilots are concerned, as an association president, it's my job to defend the pilots, and not just defend the pilots. Find out if there has been an error, why has that error occurred, so that none of the other pilots make that error. Okay, it's not the first pilot error that is going to cause a crash. There have been several pilot errors that has contributed to crashes. Now, if that is the case, just show us the proof. Let it be conclusive. When you're blaming somebody who is now accused of murder-suicide, you better have some proof, and conclusive proof. That's what we are saying. If that is a pilot error, show us why it's a pilot error. If it's a machine error, show us what the machine error is. If it's an interface, man-machine interface, let's see what that is. Our idea is this should never happen again. So, therefore, we believe that the way this report is sort of written or dictated, it is mischievous. Once again, Shabir, it is mischievous.
So joining us is also Captain Amit Singh. Captain Amit Singh is he's a founder of the Aviation Safety Matters. He's a fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society of London. He has been associated with 2 airlines in India, Indigo and AirAsia. He was Chief of Safety, Director of Flight Operations, and Chief Pilot Training. Thank you, Captain Amit, for joining us.
Thank you for having me over.
So Captain Thomas, who I guess will also have to leave because he has another appointment, but if I can just drag you into the conversation very quickly, he was saying that this whole report is mischievous because it has just put out one line of the cockpit conversation and also thrown in one line about the FAA advisory, plus said that the fuel control switches went from off to on. So he's saying there's a deliberate attempt to not reveal anything much, but to create doubts and to perhaps put the blame entirely on the pilots. Do you also believe so?
Well, I do agree because there is a deliberate move not to present the facts. Right now, the objective of preliminary report is to present factual information. So in the first 30 days, whatever you have, just collate it and then present it. You don't have to analyze anything. You don't have to give anybody a clean chit. You don't have to point fingers or blame. And there is no need to give your own analysis or interpretation or version. For example, those 2 lines have been, you very rightly said, mischievously placed in a manner, in a position that leads people or media or regulators to think that there is something connected with the fuel switches and the pilots. So had these 2 lines been somewhere else or in some other context, the whole meaning would have changed. Like if we can say that who moved the fuel control switches? So was it a physical switch that moved, or was it an electrical signal which was recorded? So now people are connecting the movement of this switch. The indication is received by the flight radar recorder, FDR. And then next you place these 2 lines, which are not the transcript. They are basically the investigator who has heard on the CVR. So his version of the CVR. So he might have changed the context, the words here and there. So that is kind of a misrepresentation. That is something which is unethical for an investigator to do. Either you say something, deliver the facts, or do not deliver the facts. But here they're trying to introduce something which points towards a human factor issue and tries to give a clean chit to other things like technical issues. From the beginning, if you see, there was no attempt to corroborate facts or give out pertinent facts. facts which are not pertinent and not needed at this stage were introduced. So that the ordinary reader obviously will not be able to comprehend these things. Like what is the purpose of giving, when did the ram air turbine start
Hydraulics.
pressurizing the hydraulic? So what is the intent? Either you want to give, you give what time did the rat deploy.
Correct.
So that is the important thing, which means the engines have failed before that.
Can you simplify this, Captain Thomas? Because the report says, as per the EAFR data, both engines' N2 values passed below minimum idle speed, and the RAT hydraulic pump began supplying hydraulic power at about 8:47 UTC.
Who asked him to give now that we have repeated verbatim whatever we had to say? So who asked him what time this hydraulic came? You tell us when the RAT deployed. That has key connotations. You see, there are three simple cases under which the RAT or ram air turbine will deploy automatically. 1, if both engines fail. 2, if there is a total hydraulic failure. 3, if there is a total electrical failure. Now, when there's an electrical failure, out of these 3, when there's a total electrical failure, the ram air deploys instantly. Okay, otherwise in the engine, it waits for N2 to go below 50% and then deploys and then starts supplying limited hydraulics and electrics to the aircraft. We are not interested why it supplied what time it supplied hydraulics. When did it deploy? That will tell you very quickly what the problem was. So these are the key factors that.
So to both of you, I have a quick question. I mean, this is not the first air crash in India itself. In the recent past, we have seen in Mangalore, we have seen in Karipur. Were those investigation reports also initially mischievous? Do you remember?
Incompetent, I would put it. Not, I won't put it. I'm sorry, Amit. Amit, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I wouldn't put it as mischievous at that time because there were no external parties involved in this. Incompetent, 100%. In the Mangalore crash, again, I call this AAIB, a Rehabilitation Center for Air Force Personnel. I have proof to say that this is what happens. The guy did not know how to draw Mangalore airport diagram. First diagram was wrong.
AAIB is the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau.
Correct. In the Mangalore crash, it was not even there during the Mangalore crash. Post that it came. Then the
Karipur
crash, they investigated. They gave a lot of, if you see that report, how come there were no fire engines or fire crash tenders there? In an air crash, it's a high impact occurrence. Passengers will have spinal injuries. So, who were doing the rescue? People on the road outside Karipur airports, this one, and they were being put in auto rickshaw, tempo traveler, and all that, and going. Where were the crash tenders? Where were the ambulances? Where is that airport director? So they gave some recommendations as well. At the end of a crash report, they give you some recommendation that this should be done. Have those recommendations been followed? So at the end of the day, one night prior to getting an investigator, they were searching all over Jet Airways. Hello, is there anybody who can do it? Can you do it, please? You go on. And that's how more malleable characters are there who will listen to you. They will be selected. So that, I think, has happened.
What is your opinion, Captain Amit?
See, an accident does not happen out of the blue, right? Aviation is such a safe environment. There's so many checks and balances, compliances. An accident is basically a testimony that the entire system has crumbled and that the error has passed through the hundreds of checks to reach the pilot who was overwhelmed at that time or whatever, could not handle, because pilot is the last barrier and the first person to reach the scene of accident, right? So this has been happening for so long that it meets with an accident because things become lax. When nothing is happening, people say that, why are you worrying? Nothing is happening. Everything is safe. On the other hand, we have something called high reliability organizations, wherein we have high risk industries like nuclear and oil and gas. There, when things are quiet, the safety managers are more anxious that where is the next thing which is going to come from. They keep analyzing more and more data to try to predict that next accident could happen here, next fire could happen here. So they are more anxious. Here everybody sits quiet that why are you creating a ruckus? Everything is quiet, nothing is happening. So before an accident, there are always precursors. You will have Heilmrich triangle, which says that you have 1,000 small incidents, you have 300 serious incidents, then you have a major accident. So we have so many helicopter accidents, flight school accidents, then we have a big accident. Because the safety culture which has developed is such that it is we call it the pathological culture. That's the lowest one, in which you do not do anything until you're caught. So people are doing whatever they are until somebody catches them, and then they say, okay, we will do some corrective measure. Rather than a generative safety culture, which is the top, in which you say that I am responsible for my safety and safety of others. You do over and above what is required. We try to do the bare minimum to comply for the safety as per regulations. So we say we are compliant with safety regulations. Even for the flight duty time limitations, that is a limit set by the regulator. So you should have a buffer in between so that you never reach the limit. Even if there is a delay of a flight or whatever, you never reach that limit. But we operate till the limit, that the pilot can be utilized till the limit. You have to look at the whole thing, the bigger picture of where things are going. We have audits and audits every year. So why are things not picked up in the audits? Now, people say that Air India has been fined. So fine is not a deterrent for Air India. Because Air India has the capacity to pay 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 50 lakhs. They'll pay. It is not a deterrent. But if you reduce their flight schedule, that we will curtail your flight schedule by 15%, which they have done now. So that would impact Air India, and they will be more vigilant, and they'll take better steps to enhance safety. Otherwise, it's easy for them to pay and get away. It's like a murder and you pay for a murder. What happened with Boeing? They were pressed with criminal charges after the MAX accident, and they did an out-of-court settlement. When people died, so nobody got caught. They just paid money and got away. So in aircraft accident in India especially, I call it how to get away with murder, which is people die in an accident. The AIB report is kind of doctored. It blames the pilot. The police FIR is lodged. The police investigates. But the police takes the AIB report, which they are not supposed to do, because they don't have the capacity and capability of independent investigation. They take the AIB report and they say, oh, look, the probable cause is a pilot error. Since the pilot is not alive, case closed. So the criminal case is also closed. So they don't look at the criminality of the whole accident. That was there a sabotage? Somebody manipulated things? Or was there a deliberate action? So all those aspects are not looked into. A lot of accident reports, nobody reads them. I read a lot of accident reports. In India, they contradict each other. In the same report, it will contradict. Like this preliminary report, the whole timeline doesn't match. So whoever has made this has not gone through it clearly. If your aircraft has got airborne at 3.9 and they say after 4.2 you reach, the aircraft reached maximum 180 knots, then the fuel switches were operated. At 4.7, it says your hydraulic power started generating. So now if you work backwards, it takes about 5 seconds for the between your RAD deployment and hydraulic power, right? So from 4.7, you work backwards 5 seconds. It takes 2 seconds for the RAD to deploy, 7 seconds. And then there is either electrical failure, 1 second or 2 seconds for this. So you have 7 to 8 minutes. So you come back to 3.9, work backwards, which is the time aircraft was getting airborne. So that is the point where something happened, not later on. And why I'm saying this is because The next best credible evidence is the flight radar data. That is the ADSB data. And research has said that that data can be used in general aviation where they do not have FDRs and all. So that data is reliable enough to be used. For that day, for that aircraft, the data says the aircraft attained 180 knots maximum, which is the same as a preliminary report. Preliminary report does not give a height, but flight radar gives the height of 21 feet, which is just about the ground. After that, you'll see a gradual decline in the speed immediately because something happened there. That is why the landing gear was not taken up, or because there was a distraction in the cockpit. Normally, first action is to take the landing gear, but since there was a distraction, gear was left down. So something happened in that critical point, and the CVR has not been, the transcript has not been given for that. What was the communication or discussion, conversation between the pilots? What were the ICAS messages, the warnings, the whalers coming in? So that is the critical piece of evidence which has not been presented.
So, Captain Amit, a lot of people ask us when we go for events, etc., saying, how do we understand what is correct news, what is fake news, what is misinformation, who's the media to believe, etc. So, what I think now after this accident is that there is a considerable fear, right? But air travel is not something that you can avoid. So, people have to opt for airplanes. I don't know if it's a good question or it's a dumb question, but still I will ask at the risk of this, that as a flyer, as someone who uses an airplane, is there something that people can be mindful of? I'm sure that a lot of people are now skeptical of flying Boeing and Dreamliners, right? So is there something that people should keep in mind also?
So what people need to do is demand for answers, because there is no public forum or association for the passengers. If a passenger has a query, wants to resolve some issue, be it technical, non-technical, there is no body. There is no passenger body. I'll take a small example like passenger ticket refunds. So till COVID, what was happening is if a flight gets cancelled or something, the passengers used to get a credit note and to buy a ticket later on the same airline. But the DGCA regulation says that if there's a cancellation, the passenger will be given an option that you want cash or you want a credit note. But the airlines were not presenting them that option. They were straight away giving them credit note. So there is a regulation there, but people don't know about it. So there has to be a body which basically connects all of them. That the passengers should know their rights and should also know their responsibilities. Because we see so many passenger related issues, that what are the etiquettes of travel and how do you behave when you're traveling. So it has to be both ways. Education of the traveling public. If you want everybody to travel from the remotest part, then you have to educate people that this is what is acceptable, not acceptable. These are your rights and these are your responsibilities. So when you're becoming a third largest aviation market in the world, then these things have to begin. Our problem is that we don't have institutions which produce high quality professionals. We are still dependent on foreign agencies and bodies. Pilot training, 60% of it happens abroad, and initial training also abroad. All their high quality, like aircraft accident investigation, that doesn't happen. Training doesn't happen in India because we don't have those institutions. We have to go abroad to UK to do these trainings. So everything is there. And we are not developing. In the last 20 years, we haven't developed one institution. So in the future, the foundation is so big. That is why it collapses. The moment you put pressure on it, it collapses. The moment you have fog, it collapses. We are resilient as individuals, that we come back, bounce back. But then again, next year, the same thing repeats. So the system is fragile.
Yeah. No, Indian resilience is the most abused word, perhaps, saying spirit of Bombay, spirit of India, etc. And I just want to add that Railways does have quite a few very active passengers associations, which do come up with a lot of demands, oppositions, etc. So thank you very much.
So railway safety is under the Civil Aviation Ministry. So to make it independent, they moved it out of railways. But the aircraft investigation is still an office of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. That is written in the Act. That is to prevent any kind of pressure or something coming in. Control. So that is the kind of independence. But AAIB is under Ministry of Civil Aviation. It is an office of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. So it cannot be an autonomous body because their promotion, their appointment, everything is dependent on the Civil Aviation Ministry.
Yeah, so as I was saying, that railways does have a lot of passenger associations which makes demand. So perhaps it is time for passengers to think about how we can make air travel more accountable to us.